Good morning, folks. I want to take a look at the poem of Edwin Markham, The Man with the Hoe. I think it's a neat poem, partly for personal reasons, because it was written by a high school principal. And I'm thinking during this coronavirus school shutdown, maybe I should also take some time to sit down and write a poem. This was one poem that was Edwin Markham's claim to fame. He became wealthy and famous. I don't need that. But who knows? Maybe we'll sit down and write something at some point. He continued writing. This was his one poem for which he's known by. He wrote enough poetry to fill 10 other volumes, but this is the one that really made his claim to fame. He's unique in this time period. He's writing at the same time as men like Stephen Crane, Jack London, Frank Norris, the naturalists that we read last week, who see man as being a speck in the universe, completely unimportant, and if there is any God, he's completely indifferent to humanity. The universe is completely indifferent to humanity. Sometimes it seems like nature is hostile, but really nature is just looking back and doesn't care what happens. That's the naturalist perspective. Pretty pessimistic, not very inspiring reading. Edwin Markham responds to the naturalists with his poem, The Man with the Hoe, and other poetry. He does not respond from a Christian perspective with the expectation that since Jesus Christ died on the cross, sin, which is the cause of our problems, will in the end be defeated. The serpent's head will be bruised. We will have a millennium and a new Jerusalem. That's the Christian expectation which we are all longing for. Markham responds to the naturalist perspective from a romantic perspective. And in the romantic stories, people generally live happily ever after. That's a little bit of overreaching conclusion I make there, but that's generally the romantic perspective, happy endings. He also writes from a humanist perspective, where the solution to our problems lies in ourselves, lies in our own reason and our own efforts. Again, that's not the Christian perspective. This is the perspective that Markham is writing from, and he makes a good response to the naturalists. So his work does have value for us in that perspective, in that way. I want to point out something first, how he looks at man. We'll read a couple of the first lines of the poem. It says, "Bowed by the weight of centuries, he leans upon his hoe and gazes on the ground, the emptiness of ages in his face, and on his back the burden of the world. Who made him dead to rapture and despair, unfeeling. A thing, this man is called a thing that grieves not and that never hopes, stolid and stunned. A brother to the ox?" I think that's a really important question. This is a rhetorical question that Markham is asking. It's not meant to be taken seriously, a brother to the ox. He does not believe that man is a brother to the ox. It's a rhetorical question, making a point, responding to Darwinism. No, man is not a brother to the ox. But this is how the ruling classes have made this peasant. So he seems that he doesn't have anything to hope for. There is no rapture for him. There is no despair for him. He just has a weary existence here on earth. And Markham says, no. The next stanza is this, the thing, capitalized. So this is man. He doesn't say that man is made in God's image, but there is room for that in his poem. Is this the thing the Lord God made? So this is not an evolutionary perspective. And gave to have dominion over sea and land, to trace the stars and search the heavens for power, to feel the passion of eternity. Is this it? No. Man, the rulers of the world have taken advantage of their power and suppressed the peasantry, the workers of the world, and it's a sad situation. And in line 22 it appears, he cries out as he looks upon this looks upon this man with the hoe. He says, "What gulfs between him and the seraphim? The seraphim are the angels up in heaven, and what a great gap between the two. Man has been made with much more potential for that, but the rulers of the world, the wealthy, the leaders, They've abused their power and oppressed. He says, the slave of the wheel of labor, what to him are Plato and the swing of the Pleiades? And you can continue on with that stanza, line 29. Through this dread shape, humanity has been betrayed, plundered, profaned, and disinherited. So the rulers of the world have plundered, taken all kinds of things from the peasantry, the lower classes. They've profaned them, treated them with contempt or irreverence. How is that possible unless something of value, of God perhaps, dwells within them? You can't profane something without value. And also disinherited. And this man silently cries, this man with the hoe, cries protest to the judges of the world. It's a protest that is also prophecy. And this line goes back to the third discussion question I gave you. What do the rulers of the world have to fear from this man? This man is a representative figure representing the lower classes. What do the rulers of the world have to fear from him? Well, Markham wrote this he published the poem in 1899. My goodness, in less than 20 years, the world was rocked by communist revolutions, where the workers of the world did unite in different countries and overthrew the working classes. And this is the prophecy, the warning that Markham is making. Rulers of the world, you need to get your act together. It is possible for us to change. It is possible for social situations to change. Now, Crane or London or Norris would have looked at this peasant and said, hey, nature is indifferent. He's in a tough situation. Too bad. Markham, though, is optimistic. He says, we as human beings can change our situation, whether it be through protest, through revolution, through anything else. We are not passive people without any agency, without any ability to initiate and do something. And then the last stanza, Markham writes, O masters, lords, and rulers in all lands, how will the future reckon with this man? Less than 20 years, Lenin rose up in Russia. There's also a Mexican revolution, revolutions all over the world where there is a reckoning between the peasants and the rulers. And part of this is what Markham was fearing in this last stanza. When the whirlwinds of rebellion shake all shores in line 45, how will it be with kingdoms and with kings? The king of Germany after World War I, he had to abdicate. The king of Russia abdicated after World War I. How will it be with kingdoms and with kings, with those who shaped this man who is God created, shaped him to the image that he is now, the man with the hoe without hope, brother to the ox by all appearances, when this dumb terror shall rise to judge the world after the silence of the centuries. This is Markham's poem, well known. Now you also know it. That's a nice thing, but it's a good romantic human response to the naturalist poetry that we read. Not too much enjoyment last week. Hopefully we'll enjoy the next reading by William Sidney Porter, more affectionately known as O. Henry, and this will be The Gift of the Magi. Again, the tone will be much different, and we'll talk about that next week.